Alright, so this is a special little event, as Ivor has wandered off on his own, and has a few things he's doing, all by his lonesome.
Surprise.
You were not able to join for the last session, so recapping a little bit. Basically, Ivor ended up standing up from his spot at the table at the Black Witch Tavern, and told everybody, I have a little research I need to do on my own. I can find you guys, or you can find me. I know there isn't really a designated time or place for us to meet, so that'll be fine. And then left. As you wander out of the tavern, you find yourself back in the bustling city of Ashen, full of religious iconography and the knowledge that any and all of the magic you as a wizard know is essentially not welcome here. But you did have a goal in mind as you left the tavern. So I'll ask you, where are you wishing to go?
Alright. So, I guess Ivor's gonna try his best to, see if he can pick up on any clues onto, maybe where he can get started on,
Actually, you're a sage, correct, for your background?
I believe I am,
Because sage actually has this funny little feature that out of all the background features, it is the one that you'd least realize is kind of one of the most useful. Feature, researcher. When you attempt to learn or recall a piece of lore, if you do not know that information, you often know where and from whom you can obtain it. Usually this information comes from a library, scriptorium, university, or a sage or other learned person or creature. Your DM might rule that the knowledge you seek is secreted away in an almost inaccessible place, or that it simply cannot be found. Which is kind of the part where it then is, the feature basically stops doing anything because the DM can always just say, no. Unearthing the deepest secrets of the multiverse can require an adventure or even a whole campaign. Right now, what precisely are you looking for?
Alright, so I guess what I'm precisely looking for is probably, I guess those items that he was told. I guess if he maybe knows I guess where to get started with that, are there, very specific items he needs, or if it's, one of those, as long as he has something related.
So from what little you know, you are aware that they are esoteric pieces of religious artifacts. Beyond that, you don't really know what they are. Well, you also know their general description of what type of armor they are, so to speak, of boots, gauntlets, mask, so on and so forth. And the mask is one you have interacted with. So I would say an option is going where you know the rest of the party is going and attempting to seek out aid from one of the libraries belonging to a god of knowledge. Another option is seeking out aid from just some other god. Or the last possible option is looking for somewhere in Ashen that isn't strictly speaking devoted to one particular god, but instead is just a library of knowledge that is basically a public library. Which of those would you like to try to do?
I'll go ahead and do the library first.
Okay. go ahead and roll me an investigation check to try and find your way through the city, following different bulletin boards and such to look for a non-religious library or non-temple library. "21 is good enough that I'd say it doesn't take you too long to piece together the different maps of a Shen. Admittedly, the layout of the city is a little crazy given the three-dimensionality to it. But with some degree of effort and about 20 minutes of actually digging and searching through the different streets and poking a few different people for directions, you eventually find your way into kind of nearer to the edge of the city, where fewer of the main core spires that climb up to the sky are located. A few smaller buildings. Admittedly, they're still like 3 or 4 stories tall, but they're not the spiring structures that are in the 100 to 150 stories tall. One such is a slightly run down, but it looks more like it's run down just because of the location in town where it is, being a little more worn throughout, rather than it being like any distinct lack of care to the building, as you do see a kind of older looking man outside distinctly trying to like take apart the sign out in front, and like sitting next to him on top of this ladder going up to it are other wooden pieces and a bucket of paint, clearly for him to possibly try and put up a new sign and repaint it himself. On the inside, looking in through the windows, lightly lit by candles and more heavily lit by the reflection of light in from the outside day through the windows to the inside, is several different shelves of books.
All right.
What are you going to do?
Then gonna go ahead and I guess maybe try to skim through the books to see if there's anything that would catch his eye.
All right. Slipping on inside and poking through the different books. Go ahead and roll me yet another investigation check. 24. Digging through all of the different books in here, you find a few books that start to catch your eye, but they don't seem to hold the information you're specifically looking for. As in terms of the specific lore that you're digging to find, that you garner is probably knowledge that if this is a godlike entity that had basically all of its armor, its identity, and even its own basically skin stripped away and it then imprisoned, any strict knowledge on this figure is going to be very tightly held close to the chest of those who had a direct part to play in it. Most of the books that you go through that seem to start to have some reference to anything of this sort seem to relate back to the calamity that led to the construction of the Divine Gate, separating the inner planes with the elemental planes, the Feywild, the Shadowfell, and a few other smaller, almost demi-planes from the outer planes, with the fields of Elysium, the Nine Hells, and similar, with the Divine Gate being a large spherical latticework that encompasses the inner realms out in the astral plane.
All right.
So, with that, and not really finding a whole lot on the specific thing you're looking for in this bookstore yet, what else will you try to do?
All right, so if that's going to be the case, and if he does pick up on that, then I guess maybe he's going to go ahead and try to see if there's maybe instead of the items this time, it's maybe specifically on this calamity stuff.
Okay. I guess I'd say go ahead and just make me a history check, because this is historical knowledge that almost certainly Theron would have drove into your brain at some point while you were growing up. Because I will say, I have described to you in the past the events of what the calamity was about. If you wish for me to repeat them, I can do so.
Or did it not roll?
Yeah, it did not roll.
Okay, let me try that again. Sorry, but yeah, 'cause I know I wrote notes on that.
So, the 19, and you are specifically looking, I'm assuming here, going off of what you said, you're specifically looking into knowledge relating to the calamity, but focusing on the
Mm-hmm.
end part with the divergence of gods from having any direct interaction with the inner planes, and what happened with that.
Yeah.
Okay. From what you were taught in the past, overall, as I've kind of said, the calamity happened starting with Lolth trying to climb her way up from the Underdark, leading, or basically climb her way out of her own plane in the outer realms of the, I guess, cosmological spheres into the Underdark to then lead the Drow, who were her followers, up onto the surface with the intent of basically enslaving all the other races underneath her and her people. However,
Mhm.
this only somewhat succeeded to a degree before basically the good gods, good aligned gods, started lending power to their own people to more actively and directly fight back Lolth and her followers. However, with this almost rebellion, that was followed up by several other evil aligned gods attempting similar actions, leading their followers in attempting to conquer the world, such as Tiamat leading her followers to try and basically take hordes of dragons to wreathe the land in elemental destruction between lightning, fire, ice, acid, poison, and once more being driven back as best they could. And this led to many years of just back and forth fighting among these figures, until at one point, basically two options occurred. One option of there was a man who seemed to rise to power among the mortals, and particularly a human whose name you never see listed anywhere. Only ever when he's referred to by any way other than this man or a man, it is by the title of the God Slayer. Or, no, the God Hunter. In fact, there was one point where it stated that where it basically said that people wanted to call him the God Slayer, but could not because the fact that he ideologically opposed the notion of killing any gods. In fact, the greater problem was beyond that, he not just ideologically opposed it, he also made a distinct point of noting on that is a borderline impossible feat to achieve. A god cannot be killed in the same way you would think about a normal person being killed and their soul moving on to some other place, or even their soul being destroyed. As a god is essentially a pure artifact of power describing a certain aspect of the universe, but then given basically a conscious form. Such as Ogma is a powerful god and takes on a generally humanoid figure, but he is, in essence, a pure artifact of the ideology of knowledge within the universe. Knowledge, traveling, and to some degree magic. Arcane magic, specifically. Following through on that, the God Hunter actively seemed to have a power almost akin in strength to that of the gods, but didn't have any god supporting him lending that power. And he alone started driving back evil gods that were attempting to basically conquer the world, and slowly developed a following behind him, which eventually led to what is now, in the modern day, the Inquisition, which you, Ivor, know is the group, because I think Avadal did make mention of it at one point to the full group, is the group that is currently attempting to hunt him down. Or at the very least, is the reason why he has had to flee from whatever lifestyle he had before as Husk. But on the other side of this, there was another option, so to speak. One neutrally aligned god, who, again, no name is ever written or described in any of the tomes that you had been told about, and in no book that you read on the Calamity so far has a name ever been written down. Except for the Forgotten One, basically stepped forth and attempted to assume control over the entire world. But not in an aspect similar to Lolth or Tiamat in trying to enslave all of the living beings, but basically to step in and act as a singular omniscient power to define strict laws by which man, elf, dwarf, and all the other humanoid races would have to live by in order to live in peace with each other. At least that's some of the gist you're getting after digging through some of the more wishy-washy notes that start to kind of go off on tangents on rambling about their beliefs on what he might actually have been going for, that are then not supported by any evidence other than simply, I believe this because otherwise why would the events of the Calamity have happened? Give me 1 second. My apologies, I just sneezed really hard.
Go get a tissue.
I'm fine. Right, okay. There were a lot of these notes postulating things without evidence on the more evil notions of what this god was actually intending on doing that never followed up with any actual supporting evidence. But in the end, it didn't really matter what this god's goal was, as the creation of the Divine Gate occurred through the God-Slayer sacrificing himself in a noble attempt to maintain mankind's freedom, while also basically fulfilling this forgotten god's desired objective of driving back all of the evil gods trying to conquer the world. It's not quite certain what happened. Both of them basically just vanished from existence after one massive battle between them. And in that battle, with them vanishing and the aid of the other gods, with stripping away the parts and powers of this forgotten god, taking his, not just his identity, but all of his powers in the different artifacts that he bore, and using those as a way to imprison basically both of them, with the Godslayer acting as a warden to make sure that that prison stayed in place. And all of the power that this forgotten god held being locked away. And thus, the core essence of its being stripped down to nothing, and being as close as one could ever get to killing a god. Now, this is what you have been taught, and what you were also able to garner from a 19 off of digging through a lot of things. So, how much of this is true versus how much of it is unsubstantiated claims that have just been passed down over the last 8, almost 9 centuries in just claims about one massive horrifying event by the victors of that event? You don't know. Maybe all of it's true. Maybe this god was doing something evil that some people claim to be. Or maybe it's not known, because you do know that the Inquisition, from what you have heard about them, are definitely not good people in your eyes. They have done some pretty actively atrocious things from what you have heard, at the very least from Avadol. And yet they claim to be the descending group from this god hunter, with even still being led by a figurehead at the top of them, who is given the title of God Hunter. And I would say this, going with some of this, I'm going off of the notion of your investigation of a 24 plus your history check of a 19, with you not just sticking around in that one library, but starting to poke around the town a little bit, looking through other libraries to garner information and collect it together.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll ask, off of that knowledge, is there anything specific you'd like to try and dig into?
The one that definitely sounds more familiar to him would be uh on the Forgotten One, so
Yes, because you do remember that name coming up in relation to the masks that you stole from, well, that you and your group ended up stealing from the bank.
mm-hmm. Yeah, so I would say he would definitely relate the two, thus probably relating to, I guess, what he is trying to look into. Therefore, I guess maybe if there are any other of the libraries that probably do mention this specific figure. He wants to like poke around and see if like maybe there's even the smallest hint of like any other information he can get out of that.
Okay. I'm going to ask you to make an investigation check and a religion check. The investigation check is just on bare bones notion of your own researcher tendencies, knowing some of where to poke at to try and get the information you know. Whereas the religion check is based on the information of you are in a city of gods, of churches, of basically religious beliefs. As such, any information you would gather, you are going to forever need to, while here, be cautious of A, making sure that any god you are gaining this information from, with looking into a library they hold and historical notes they have, is one who would actually be honest about that topic. And B, not getting information, not basically gaining the attention of either gods or followers that you wouldn't want while looking for this information. As while there are a few temples to... Basically all of the temples in Ashen are to either neutral gods or good aligned gods. There are no temples to the evil aligned gods. And as such, the vast majority of the good aligned gods and several of the neutral aligned gods had some active role in the creation of the Divine Gate and the sealing away of the Forgotten One.
And you said investigation?
Investigation and religion, yes. Nice nat 20.
Yep. I guess that didn't go through. That's the Legend of Zelda. I recognize it.
224s. Okay. Digging through, you get the notion that any good aligned god that you start to poke at the temples for information on either do not hold any information relating to what you are seeking, on the merit of that's not something they want to have anything to do with, or the information they have, they are keeping very much so to themselves, in the merit of basically saying, this information is dangerous enough that we wish to protect basically the general public from anyone who would want to use this information for the wrong reasons. What the wrong reasons are, they're not saying. When it comes to the more neutral aligned gods, there are a few different options you start to run into. And that includes, basically, in the direction of gods that are all about knowledge. So, Agma and all the other gods within his tower, or the tower that he sits at the top of, or gods of fate. Gods of fate are strange. They will often help people on one side or the other, whether they are good or bad, so long as they are not actively trying to essentially oppose destiny, so to speak. Now, what destiny is, never really made clear to anyone, except for the notion that there are a few people every now and then within the world who are touched with importance. Now, this importance might not be on the notion of, I'm going to one day grow up to conquer the world and be the most powerful being around, it might be simply being important that they end up being in the right place at the right time with the right set of skills. So maybe it's a farmer born in a country with a sickly king who has been lined up with the fate of learning medicinal traits from the things that he has been growing so far, to potentially take that medicine to go and help the king and heal him back to full health, and thus save that kingdom. As such, people start to tend to shy away from wanting to have much of anything to do with these gods, because they can one moment be helping you because you're following the path that they believe is where your fate leads, and then at the slightest drop of a hat, withdraw all support they're given on the notion that your fate has now changed, or you have done something to change it, and that is no longer your path. But there are also a unique few out of those who are blessed with destiny that are unlike anyone else. It's not that they have a specific role to play, it's that they have no role to play, ever, anywhere, as written. And thus, their fate is in their own hands to determine. And these gods often look to those people as to be their champions, and to lead the charge in pushing the universe in the direction that they feel it should go, to make sure everyone achieves the fate that they're basically supposed to. Among those gods is the Raven Queen, Ogma to a very, very small extent, and one other god that you don't know the name of, but you've definitely seen a symbol to them in Theron's library somewhere, of a eye-like shape with a dipping hook underneath, essentially. I can try to find a reference for you.
Please.
It is.
Also, while you're looking for a reference, I did post in Nard the stuff you were asking.
All right. Well, I can try to. I'll put it in the Discord. Or I guess not really a hook underneath, but more of an extra part over the top, and then a part that goes down underneath. Discord. Looking generally like this. You do recall from the books you'd read, one of them had made mention of that symbol relating to the knowing mistress. But that is as far as your knowledge on that goes, other than having seen that her temple seems to be viewed as being deserving a comparable position to that of Ogma's at the top of the Tower of Gods who reside within the domain of knowledge. Which is a little odd, given that no one seems to know who that temple belongs to, and the people in that temple never say willingly.
All right.
So, what do you wish to do with the remainder of your time? As I will say, it is starting to get on the later side.
Alright, so gonna go ahead and say he would probably, I guess out of the ones he probably knows, maybe dig more into the uh I literally just read her name.
Knowing mistress?
Dig into
Or
yeah.
okay. Okay, for that, I'm going to say most likely you would be spending basically the remainder of the day in her temple trying to read through what information she has there and asking questions of the other people there. So I'm going to say give me a persuasion check on the notion that you are spending your time trying to talk with people. Admittedly, right now I'm basically treating these series of events as almost a skill challenge on the basis that this is going to be a very short thing that we're doing, and since it's just a one-on-one, I'm not having you do a full-on going around the city of Ashen, talking with NPCs, yada yada yada, until you decide you want to delve into doing that.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, I get that.
Have you made the persuasion check roll? Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm having a tab between a few different things. On a 20.
Me just silently going like, why am I not this good when I'm actually in campaign?
Got it recorded of a 13, a 16, an 11, a 20, a 16, and 19 with 21, 24. You've rolled below a 20 total once this little thing. And I think the answer is you're being held back, Ivor. You're better on your own. You know what's holding you back. Or should I say, who's holding you back?
Don't you fucking dare. Sobs.
You did this to yourself. Fucking gay male Bella.
You're so mean.
It's what you've earned. It's what you deserve. Alright, anyways. After a while of kind of digging through the different notes, approaching a few different people, getting mostly just kind of weary and backing away, one younger looking man does eventually kind of come up to you, dressed in actually kind of similar robes to yours, but more red with a few purplish outlines to it. And you can see that his left arm seems to, you're not quite sure where the switch over is, but up at the shoulder, you can kind of see like a bit of his collarbone underneath the robe. So there's something there. And somewhere in the upper forearm, you think, is an attachment point to then leading down to a prosthetic hand. As he kind of walks over to you. And once again, my nose is killing me. I heard you were digging around looking for something here and also wishing to have some piece of knowledge with regards to the knowing mistress. May I ask what exactly your reasoning is?
Ivor kind of just looks at this person.
I will say it is a younger half-elven man with kind of short, sort of raggedy, dirty blonde, almost brown hair. It's almost... It kind of sits upright on his head due to how short it is. He has a fairer complexion and a pair of rather nice kind of emerald green eyes.
All right. So I guess looking over, obviously he doesn't want to like fully tell like as to why he's looking for this information, but he also knows how it probably won't go too well if he kind of just keeps it to, oh, it's like
I'm looking for a
personal.
thing. Yeah. Yeah. You can get the notion of if you're wanting help, you're going to have to give something. So you can basically just shoo him away, so to speak, but to gain anything, you get the idea you're going to have to give something as well.
Yeah.
So what do you do?
So
Go on.
I'll say that he probably won't, I guess, fully say what it is, but that I guess perhaps it's more of a he's doing a personal project on, I guess, basically he wants to find info on, I guess, forgotten gods. And that maybe that the knowing mistress could possibly have some information about that.
Looking for knowledge on forgotten gods. I mean, admittedly, if they're forgotten, that's gonna be hard to find information on. I mean, there's the forgotten god, but that's a painful subject to most religious folk to poke at. Admittedly, here, just above us was one of the main players in the sealing away of that one figure. The knowing mistress didn't have the ability to aid in that due to being preoccupied from a earlier event.
Mm-hmm.
So, admittedly, to some degree, she is, I'd have to say, for most of us here, we're neither here nor there that much on the topic of the forgotten god. On other forgotten gods, I guess theoretically it's possible for there to be gods who have been forgotten due to just over time being minor gods who have lost a position in a pantheon because of spats or their followers all being wiped out and thus whatever power they had dwindling and vanishing eventually. This is one who's the opposite of that, but that's not what you're looking for, so.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of chews on his thumb a little bit, trying to think. But, are you looking into the forgotten god or just forgotten gods?
And it just thinks about it for a moment.
You can definitely see that he's his eyebrows are knitted a little bit as he's watching you, trying to judge your expression and somewhat figure out whether you're basically up to no good or just interested in the topic, or basically somewhere in between of you don't know what you're getting yourself into and should be veered somewhere else. Because while one of them's distinctly bad, of getting up to no good, that can be done with anything. Any of these three options could be things that anyone could do. And that's where his general proclivities seem to be watching you.
Mm-hmm.
But I will ask, do you say anything back, or?
Uh, well, for one, I guess he's gonna take in what he said. Definitely, I guess keeping a mental note about how the knowing mistress probably doesn't actually know a lot that he's looking for. But considering that this person hasn't been definitely more helpful than probably most others that he's tried talking to, uh, kind of just sighs and looks at him, nodding like, yeah, I guess specifically, um, that he is looking for knowledge for the Forgotten God.
Mm-hmm. I say, go ahead and roll me a new persuasion check. Kind of takes his hand down for a second. Admittedly, there's not a whole lot that's going to be out here on that topic as, well, again, touchy subject, especially in a city of the gods. Guess I'm not really doing anything right now. What's your name? Because I will say, this guy does look to be maybe about your age, maybe a year or two older. A little harder to tell, given half-elven nature versus human nature.
I looks over at him and is just, oh, it's Ivor. And yours?
Oh, Thimbleton. Sorry, Thimbleton's my last name. Alexander Thimbleton. Kind of reaches a hand out towards you to basically offer for shaking.
Kind of smiles at that and nods, reaching his hand out to shake his hand.
All right, shaking yours, he kind of takes it back. Do you know anything like sending? I don't think you have the sending spell, but
Let me. I was about to check right now. Because what level would that be?
I mean, you can look at the standard, and if it's not in there, it's not in there. But you can also search down at the bottom, and I don't think you do. Yeah, you do not have sending.
No, yeah. Yeah, no. So, nope.
Okay, let me go get you a scroll of sending, because you're a wizard, right? Don't want to. I apologize if I'm making an assumption about you being a wizard as opposed to being a sorcerer or some other form of caster, but you do have a very robes and everything.
Guess kind of feels a bit awkward because of the city not liking I guess specifically the whole arcane stuff.
It's
So
kind of noticing that he kind
kind
of
of
puts
just
his hands up. It's fine. I'm also a wizard. So don't use the spell in here, I guess. But once you're out, you can just write it into your spell book, and that way you'll be able to contact me, and I can contact you. I guess depending on how many times you can cast it in a day. That way we can at least pass some notes back and forth on. I can look for some stuff, and if you find anything, to let me know so that I know a bit better what to look for. I could. He just kind of waves his hands in the air to make a general gesture, a little bit lost in his own words, trying to figure it out.
yeah, kind of just nods and goes along with it.
Okay. Right. Be right back. Turns around and walks away, leaving you standing by yourself in the rows of books. So I'll say, are you going to do anything while he is away, or are you just going to wait for him to come back?
Uh, Probably just gonna go ahead and wait for him to come back.
Okay. After about 4 to 5 minutes, he comes back looking a little disheveled. Holds the scroll out towards you. That took a little more than I thought I was going to ask just for a single scroll. Here. As he holds the wrapped piece of parchment out towards you.
Kind of just, it's just like, no worries, no worries, and goes ahead and takes the scroll.
All right. Scroll. You receive one scroll of sending.
Would it
Here.
would it be in my inventory
It is
or
now? And since you have been handed to it, you know what it is already.
Mm-hmm.
And as a note to you, because I know that Ivor is the first character you've ever played, and you've been gone for a long while. As a note about wizards, if you look in your spellcasting and scroll down, if you have a scroll that is of a spell in that you can cast, or you find another wizard's spell book, you can spend gold and time to copy spells from that scroll or that spell book into your own spell book, so you then permanently have access to them to prepare them. And that is sort of one of the greatest powers of a wizard, is give them a bunch of scrolls, and that isn't a bunch of one-time use things in emergency. That is now a bunch of things that they can add permanently to their, basically, tool belt. So if you spend the time and gold copying that down, you will permanently have the sending spell in your spell book, but the scroll will be destroyed in the process.
Mm-hmm. All right.
And handing that to you, he kind of just stands there for a second, smiling a little awkwardly, looking like a little bit of a dumbass, not knowing what to do with himself now. And then just, right. I don't really have anything to do with the moment. Any help with anything else? Just tries to smile at asking that. Clearly starting to realize he's looking like a little bit of a dork at the moment with trying to just be friendly.
Doesn't really mind that. Probably kind of coming off as pretty awkward too, and it's just like, no, I think that kind of really is just it.
Okay, Alexander Thimbleton, pointing at himself. Ivor... Just Ivor, or...
Marks.
Ivor Marsk. Okay. Okay, I'll keep that in mind. I'll leave you alone now, sorry. And just kind of backs away. And disappears from the bookshelves once more, leaving you by yourself now with a scroll of sending and a potential research partner.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll say, what are you doing with this? As the day is beginning to grow a bit on the later side.
I guess just to kind of just have it. How long would it take for him to copy down the spell?
So sending is... So it's 2 hours, and if I remember correctly, 50 gold pieces per level of the spell. And sending is a 3rd level spell, so it would take 6 hours and 150 gold for you to copy down the sending spell into your spellbook. The notion of this is that all of that gold is being burnt on the purchasing of magical papers and inks to transcribe down different formulas of basically having to convert it from whatever is on the scroll into your own unique understanding of the arcane so that it can then be put into your spell book for you to permanently have it prepared. And this is going to burn a lot of materials and time practicing this spell over and over and over again with several failures until you get it right, and then get it right in a way that is permanently repeatable. So I guess I'd basically say you would need to go also purchase the materials for this, but that's a lot more flavor text purchasing, because technically speaking, the feature directly converts your gold and time into this spell, which is kind of just weird.
Yeah, but I'm looking through my shit. Ivor does not have the money pouch, therefore he cannot be spending the monies.
Right. Ivor has 10 gold pieces of his own money,
Oh my
with
god.
having left all the other gold with the rest of the party.
And this is exactly why you're supposed to split your shit with your ex beforehand. Yeah, so as much as I would like for him to just try doing the sending spell, he don't got the money, so
Theron, or Ivor would know that Theron knows the sending spell. Technically speaking, you could just use... This is me posing a plan to you because this is something Ivor would think of, and I don't know if you would think of it. He could use the sending spell to contact Theron to ask for basically help in returning back home, to then copy the spell from Theron into his spellbook.
learn sending. Dad, can you come help me?
I mean,
you think you can help me?
admittedly, your dad is also your teacher. Oh, that does remind me, after that last session, everyone did gain a level, so in a minute here, I will have you level up to level 11. Which I guess, technically speaking, you gain 2 spells from, so you could add the sending spell, but...
Oh, wait, oh. This is what happens when I am not here.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of one of those things where I know he needs it.
But you also have an alternative way of gaining it. This is just a fuck it, give it to me now way of doing it.
Yeah.
But it does also mean that that's one spell that you could get otherwise that you are not getting. And as I will note, as a level 11 wizard, you would be gaining at that level access to 6th level spells.
Because it's one of those things where I don't know if I could chance it or not.
Up to you.
Yeah, you know what? Okay, just because I would like to see what I can get, I'm gonna go ahead.
Would you like to just go ahead and level up now?
And just more like, okay, like I'll level up, but the way he's gonna get sending is gonna be through mentor / daddy figure here.
You're gonna call You're gonna call Dad and ask him for help? Because, I mean, technically speaking, while Theron is Ivor's adoptive father, it is also the case that he has, for a majority of Ivor's life, been also Ivor's tutor, with Ivor being Theron's apprentice. And so it is... One way of looking at it is, yes, Dad, can you teach me this thing? The other way of looking at it is he is going back to his original master to ask for aid in the subject that said master taught him in. Which is not an
Right.
unreasonable thing to do. Many wizards would, if they needed help, go and ask for aid from their previous teacher, and even potentially choose to study alongside that professor, as Theron has even asked for Ivor on a few occasions, with even what was being done while the party was getting their ass over to a Palmer to work alongside him in a few different research projects.
Yeah.
All right.
No, yeah. So that's how he's gonna learn sending. He's gonna go ahead, just ask Theron for help on
So I will
that one.
say, going on that notion, you make your way out of the tower, down and out of the city of Ashen, to basically a little bit outside of the city by a mile or two, which takes a couple hours to get to, because you don't want to be casting that spell right in the middle of the city due to you being an arcane caster. So while sending does have a divine way of casting it, you would not be casting it that way. And so stepping outside of the city, you pull the scroll open and you start to cast sending.
Yes.
And it is 2. Who are you casting sending to? I'm pretty sure it's to Theron, but I want to make absolutely certain that...
Yes, to Theron, yes,
okay.
To Theron.
What are the 25 words you're sending?
Oh, okay.
You could write it out into the chat just so you have an easy way of then, like, counting the words.
Gonna hope I am not going overboard. Sorry, so would it be he's trying to relearn this one, or because you said it wouldn't be that uncommon for...
So it's not uncommon for... if there is stuff that you have not learned out in the world from your worldly experience that you know your teacher would have access to or knowledge about, it would not be uncommon to go back to them and ask for help in learning that subject, because most wizards who take on apprentices, oftentimes there is, even if they aren't like Theron and Ivor, where it's literally adoptive child and adoptive parent, they often end up taking on a pseudo-parental role to those characters, to those people, and even being role models for them.
Okay, it's more like me trying to ward this specifically.
So, it'd be akin to if you were to say... trying to think of the appropriate way of saying this, because it's not the same as, like, calling up a high school teacher and asking for help. It'd be more like... the best way I have to explain it is, you're calling him and asking him for help in learning a new spell. Because this is not a spell you know, but it is a spell that you know he knows.
Let me make sure this is enough before I send it. Probably sounds really fucking
So with
weird.
sending, you get up to 25 words. You don't have to use all 25.
No, like, because I want to make sure I'm not going
Okay,
over it
yeah, fair enough.
again. All right, you just tell me if I went overboard. But
Yeah.
I tried.
I am trying to tell you, yeah.
Yeah.
It's where are you putting it? Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4,
Fantasy grounds.
7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Yeah, no. Theron, could you please help and teach me sending? Okay. Upon sending that out to him, a second or two passes before you hear back. All right. I'll be there in a moment. Well, try to be. It's difficult since I already used teleportation. And that is the message you get back from him. After about another hour of sitting out there with the sun slowly starting to set over the horizon, there's a bit of a pulling sensation to you, kind of off to your left before, and the entire air sucks in and then blasts away slightly as Theron appears there before you holding a staff in his hand, looking a little nauseous.
Oh boy.
I do not like using this thing. He just sticks it in the ground and turns to you. Are we going back to a Palmer, or are you wishing to simply learn it out here? Kind of gestures to the open plain that you're sitting in. As it is actually a kind of nice setting, as the air is reasonably calm. There's a few clouds in the sky, with the sky itself being painted a mix of purples, pinks, and oranges, with the sun being just a little bit over the horizon at this moment.
But you said it takes
Takes
6 hours?
6 hours to learn, yeah.
Sorry, because I'm trying to take that into account. Or like, would that not matter really?
That depends on where you are, because if you're doing it there, then you basically have to sit there for 6 hours out in the middle of, I guess, out in the middle of the countryside of Ashen, learning the spell, which might get you a few odd eyes from any passing pilgrims, but out here at the very least, no one's going to actively bother you. And admittedly, it's a few odd eyes, but no one's going to bother you because Ashen is kind of located within a country whose greatest focus is on the research and development of arcane magic.
Right. Alright, then. I guess just keeping all that in mind. And it is just, well, if it makes it, we can probably just do it here.
Alright. I assume that you're wishing to do it here because you're going to go and rejoin your compatriots afterwards?
Odds at that. Yeah.
Right. I guess I'm somewhat asking you, Ani, if you think you'll be able to rejoin the party anytime soon. Because if not, then it does work a little better for me to basically say, Ivor's going back off to researching with Theron.
Oh. Mm. Sorry, it's because, like, the whole, like, time stuff is throwing me off usually.
True. It is the same day as when Ivor separated from the party. It's just, for them, there are other events going on. And so, whereas for Ivor, it's, you've reached almost the end of the day.
Right. Mm. Then no, yeah, then I guess redacted. I mean he still needs it, but kind of just I guess for him he would be thinking, well, since he is helping me learn sending, that he'll go ahead and do any other research that Theron is asking him.
Okay, then I guess the altered answer of going back to a Palmer, he kind of reaches a hand out to you of the notion of holding hands while he recasts the teleportation spell through the staff to return back to home.
Mm-hmm.
Do you take his hand?
Yes, he takes his hand.
Taking your hand, he reaches over, pulls the staff back from the ground where he had it, put it, lifts it up. Hold your breath. Otherwise, this is going to suck. He himself takes a deep breath in. Do you?
Yes.
And he brings the staff down,
Yes,
and as it touches on the ground, there is an eruption of wind around you. And for a split second, you basically feel your entire body being stretched from almost as if like your back end is still back in a shed while your front is being pulled all the way to a Palmer and into Theron's manor before in a split second your back snaps back to your front and you're standing there on the teleportation circle, leaving you feeling a little nauseous and understanding that if you didn't hold your breath, you'd probably be gasping for air right now, as Theron himself lets out the breath and looks slightly more pale.
Kind of feels bad for that because he more or less asked him to come back and forth. But
I hate this staff. And kind of sets it to the side into a small cupboard full of other staves at the basically edge of the teleportation room. Right, sending. And I guess while we're here, a few other things as well, just so that you're more equipped for the road. That is me waving my hand and gesturing towards your leveling up to level 11.
Yep.
Alright, two of you make your way off into his library, and we'll say over the next 6 hours, you start to learn the spell for sending, as Theron provides the 150 gold for you to do so, and also basically the room and space for you to learn the spell. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and end off the recording, and we will go ahead and level you up to level 11. And any further things to happen with Ivor and that research will happen when it happens. And I guess I'll try and inform you on that, but you also can try and keep a note with me on it. But signing off from this little micro one-on-one of what's going on with Ivor while the party is doing their things.
Adventures of Ivor.
Farewell.